اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن أعداءهم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرتي، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاري والوتر الموتور، السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت المصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات، فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشيائهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاطبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجان، ولعن الله عمرو بن سعد، ولعن الله شمران، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنكبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيتي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قتلك ونسب لك الحرب، وبالبراءة ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانا وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشيائكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وتقربوا إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم، وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناسبين لكم الحار، وبالبراءة من أشيائه وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم، ورزقني البراءة من أعدائكم، أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يبلغني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم، وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمسابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مسابا بمصيبتي، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقام هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله، في كل موطن وموقف وكفى فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم العن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية عليهم منك اللعنة أبدا الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فزائف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب العليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي وبالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبالموالاة وشايت وبايعت وتابت على قتلي. اللهم العنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بكيت وبكي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص عن أول ظالم باللعن مني وابدأ به أولا ثم العن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم العن يزيد خامسا، والعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجان وعمر بن سعد وشمر وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. اللهم لك الحمد حمدا شاكرين لك على مسابحين. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذين بذلوا موحجهم دون الحسين عليه السلام. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم والعن لهم أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات. سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. زندان کھل گیا ہے، سکینہ وطن چلو، سجاد کہہ کے گر پڑا، چھوٹی سی قبر پر. زندان کھل گیا ہے، سکینہ وطن چلو، سجاد کہہ کے گر پڑا، چھوٹی سی قبر پر. مظلوم ایسے گر پڑا، مظلوم ایسے گر پڑا، تربت پہ بہن کی، جیسے حسین تا گرا ہے اکبر کی لاش پر. دیکھو نہیں رہی میرے ہاتھوں میں اب رسن، جانے لگا ہے قافلہ اب لوٹ کر وطن، لیکن تو بہن شام میں، لیکن تو بہن شام میں قیدی ہی رہ گئی، کھا کر تماچے سو گئی، زندہ کی خاک پر. کرتا ہوں یاد رو کے میں منظر وہ درد کا، کانوں کے زخم پر جو تماچا تجھے لگا، بابا کو تو سینہ پہ، بابا کو تو سینہ پہ صدا دیتی رہ گئی بابا سینا پہ روتے تھے تب تجھ کو دیکھ کر اماں کی طرح تجھ کو نہ مل پائی تھی ردا بابا کی طرح تجھ کو کفن بھی نہ مل سکا پتھر بھی کھائے شام میں پتھر بھی کھائے شام میں تو نے میری طرح ناقے سے گر کے ہو گئی تیری بھی خوں کمر اور کربل میں چھن گئی تھی تیرے سر سے جو ردا واپس میں لا چکا ہوں اسے دیکھ تو ذرا سر پر میں تیرے رکھتا سر پر میں تیرے رکھتا ردا اپنے ہاتھ سے افسوس ہائے شام میں تو نہ رہی مگر زندان کھل گیا ہے سکینہ وطن چلو سجاد کہہ کے گر پڑا چھوٹی سی قبر پر مظلوم ایسے گر پڑا مظلوم ایسے گر پڑا تربت پہ بہن کی جیسے حسین تھا گرا اکبر کی لاش پر الفاتحہ
محمد وآل محمد صلوات سکینہ کہتی تھی بابا مجھے بہت مارا سکینہ کہتی تھی بابا مجھے بہت مارا جہاں بھی جس نے بھی چاہا مجھے بہت مارا، سکینہ کہتی تھی بابا مجھے بہت مارا، مدینے والے محمد کی میں نواسی ہوں، بتایا جس گھڑی میں فاطمہ کی پوتی ہوں، جو نام دادی کا آیا مجھے بہت مارا، وہ خون روتا تھا حالت کو دیکھ کر میری، تماچے لگتے گئے میں یتیم ہوتی گئی، گواہ ہے میرا بھیا مجھے بہت مارا، سکینہ کہتی تھی بابا مجھے بہت مارا، یوں اپنے بچوں کو بازار میں ہنساتے رہے، خوشی کے واسطے ان کی مجھے رلاتے رہے، میں چپ ہوئی تو دوبارہ مجھے بہت مارا، بچھڑ گئی تھی سفر میں اونٹ سے گر کر، تلاش ختم ہوئی جب لائن کی مجھ پر، اٹھایا شمر نے درا مجھے بہت مارا، لائن ڈالا تھا زلفوں میں جیسے ہاتھ تیرے، تمہارے لاشے سے زندان شام تک سے پکڑ کے بالوں سے بابا مجھے بہت مارا، لحد میں آئے گی دادی تو ان سے بولوں گی، میں 4 برسوں میں لگتی ہوں آپ کے جیسی، ہوں میں بھی پہلو شکستہ مجھے मुझे बहुत मारा।
على حب السيدة رقية سلام الله عليها صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بالاستشهاد Imam Ali ibn al-Husayn, Imam al-Sajjad. If I can please ask for everyone to please recite Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha for all of those marhumeens, especially those that died on this day of Imam al-Sajjad, for all of those that have no one to pray for them, and for the mu'mineen and mu'minat from all across the world. كل أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات سورة الفاتحة. My brothers, before I do call the respected Honorable Sheikh to the minbar, when I do recite the dhikr of Rasulullah and his blessed family, if you can please at that moment stand and move as far forward as possible so as to make space for those who have yet to join us. This marks the end of our majlises, unfortunately. For many of us, we might not know the rank that these gatherings hold. In Kamal al-Ziyarat, Ibn Qulaway narrates a hadith on the authority of Imam al-Sadiq, where it states that when a majlis of Azaa of Imam al-Husayn is established, Allah establishes a pillar of light that goes to the heavens. And a call is heard that, "O angels of mine, go and visit this gathering, for this is a place where the grandson of my Habib Muhammad is remembered and buka is shed over him." These gatherings are a source of nearness for each and every one of us to get close to the Aim alayhim wassalam, and for us to take lessons, as our respected scholar reminded us. We must learn from Imam al-Sajjad how in the palace of Sham he stood up against oppression and he stood for haqq. That oppression we must stand for is anything that brings down the dhikr of Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. That oppression which we must stand against is anything that belittles Azaa and the musibah and the fada'il of the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim wassalatu wassalam. It is now with a great honor that I call upon our respected and esteemed scholar, Sheikh Shabbar Mahdi, to the minbar. Afla man salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنام حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المذلومين المنتخبين المنتجبين الذين كلامهم نور وأمرهم رشد ووصيتهم التقوى وفعلهم الخير وعادتهم الإحسان وسجيتهم الكرم لا سيما على مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن الأسكري أرواحنا فدا ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وإذا قيل لكم تفسحوا في المجالس فافسحوا يفسح الله لكم صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the human nature has placed the idea of commemorating and mourning for your beloved within whichever society or community you look at, religious, irreligious, those that follow the madhab of Ahlul Bayt, those that don't do so, those that have belief and those that have no belief whatsoever. Placed in their innate nature, human nature, is the idea of mourning or commemorating the lives of those that have passed, especially those of influence in their community, those of position in that society. Part and parcel of your nature is to mourn. What differs is the way in which we mourn for our personalities and those that we love. And so some, for example, will mourn and remember and commemorate by holding parades. Others will have a public holiday. A third group of people will hold a minute silence. Or there are those, like the followers of Ahlul Bayt, that will gather and hold majalis. The way of mourning is different. However, the innate nature of the human being is to have some sort of remembrance and some sort of commemoration for those beloved or those people of prominence in your community or society that have passed. And today I wish to look at the concept of majlis and answer a number of questions about these gatherings that we have. Why is it that these gatherings are held? Where is it that Quran al-Kareem uses the word majlis? What etiquettes what we taught about majlis of Imam al-Husayn from Imam Zayn alAbidin, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. And what were some of the first majalis held? Why is it that these majalis are repeated 1,400 years later? And so the first question that arises about this concept of majalis and our gatherings that we have for Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam is, what exactly does the term mean? And where is it that Quranul Kareem uses the term majlis? You find that literally majlis refers to a place where people sit. A place where people gather, whatever that may be, is known as a majlis. And so even though today we use majlis specifically for a gathering or commemoration where there is a recital of musibah and tragedy, literally the term majlis means a gathering where people sit together. Quranul Kareem will use majlis in the same meaning. And so there's one place in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the term majlis in the verse that I have quoted. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَكُمْ تَفَسَّحُوا فِي الْمَجَالِسِ فَافْسَحُوا. When you are told make space in your majlis, make space, Allah shall make space for you. So what is the story behind this? We're told that the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, on one occasion in Medina wishes to honor those that fought in the Battle of Uhud. So the Prophets of Islam wished to honor those individuals that participated in the battle. And the Prophet of Islam would often, every single day after Salah, for example, have a majlis, have a gathering. That after Salah he sits and people will sit around the Holy Prophet and ask questions or listen to the Holy Prophet's guidance. One issue that Quranul Kareem mentions often in regards to these gatherings that are held of the Prophet of Islam is who gets to sit where. Naturally, when the Prophet of Islam is sitting in the masjid after Salah, people wish to sit as close to the Prophet as possible. And there would be certain people that once he sat next to the Prophet, no matter what happens, he's not going to move. And so Quranul Kareem would say, you sit next to the Prophet, you ask your question, then you go and allow someone else to sit and ask their questions. There is a certain etiquette of how you enter into gatherings, where you sit in the gathering. For example, we're told when Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam would enter into any gathering, he would find the first place available and sit there. The first place that he finds that is free, he would sit there. And he wouldn't encourage that people make a special place for him to sit, and he will only sit in that area. So in any case, the Prophet of Islam wishes to honor the people of the Battle of Uhud. After Salah, there is a gathering, a majlis. Naturally, people came and sat as close to the Prophet of Islam as possible. These people that sat close to the Holy Prophet, many of them were not in the Battle of Uhud. And so when those people came for whom this gathering was organized to honor, when they came, the Prophet of Islam looked at those people that sat close to him and said, if you don't mind, take a step back, make some space for those people that are coming. When the Prophet of Islam says, make space, fafsahu, make space in the gathering so that they can sit close to me. Quran al-Kareem says some of those people immediately stood up and went back. Ya Rasulullah, this is your command. The reason why they have come here is so that you can honor them. He goes back. Certain people went back, but on their face you could see the color of anger. And so they would claim, why is it that when I came early in the gathering and I was able to sit close to the Prophet, why is it that those that came after me are given special treatment? And so even though they listened to what the Prophet of Islam told them, on their face they weren't happy with the command of the Holy Prophet. And so Quran al-Kareem reveals this verse. إِذَا قِيلَ لَكُمْ تَفَسَّحُوا فِي الْمَجَالِسِ. If you're told, make space in your majlis. This is the only place in Quran where the word majlis is used. If you are told, make space in your majlis, in your gathering, make space, فَافْسَحُوا. Why? يَفْسَحِ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. Allah will make space for you in Jannah. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَرْفَعِ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْعِلْمَ دَرَجَاتٍ. He says, look at the people, how they dealt with the order of the Prophet. Some people straight away, the Prophet of Islam has made an order, they moved back. Others, he made the order, they weren't happy. So Allah would say there are certain people that have been raised in Iman and Ilm. Iman and Ilm, knowledge, are of levels. And so you could see the different levels of Iman in front of you. Those who had strong Iman, as soon as they were told move, they moved. Those objected were those that had weak Iman. The idea being is that this term in Quran al-Kareem is used specifically for any gathering. And so when I say a majlis of Imam al-Hussein, the reason why I call it such is because there is a gathering involved. If this question has been understood, the second question that arises is, what is the first majlis held for Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salatu wasalam after Ashura? For the scholars that have written in regards to the life of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, have written in detail the first majalis that were held. Now the first majalis ever held were those majalis held before the tragedy of Abi Abdullah. So you've heard, for example, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to this prophet that this will happen. That prophet would hear the name Hussein and he would be hazeen, he would have grief. So there were majalis held before. But what is the first, or one of the first official majalis held for Sayyid al-Shuhada after Ashura? There are two possibilities, both of them organized by Sayyid al-Sajidin. The first is that which you hear year upon year, that as the family of Ahlul Bayt are set free from the prison of Sham, they request to have a house where they can mourn and remember Abi Abdullah. And so al-Masa'ib, Sayyida Zaynab, salamullahi alayha, says, first we will mourn, then we will go, a majlis is held. But there's another report of one of the first official majalis held for Abi Abdullah, and this teaches me and you how the majlis was held. What was it that Imam Sajjad wished to see in a majlis? Sheikh Abbas Qumi says that when the Ahlul Bayt returned to Medina, the first majlis held for Sayyid al-Shuhada was a majlis of women, not a majlis held by men. Which women? The report says the family, all of the women from the family of Sayyid al-Shahadat gathered in the house of one of the wives. Some have said Banin. They gathered, the report says, all of them would wear black. So the wearing of black clothing in a majlis of Sayyid al-Shahadat was something that happened at the very beginning. And here, by the way, there is a principle that we have in jurisprudence. Sometimes a ma'soom says something. This is called qawl. Sometimes a ma'soom performs something. This is called fi'lul ma'soom. And both of these are different, by the way. What the ma'soom says, a jurist deals differently with compared to what a ma'soom does. You cannot conflate the two. A ma'soom performs a certain action, a faqih deals with that in one way. A ma'soom says a certain action, the jurist deals with it in another way. The third is something is performed in front of the ma'soom, he doesn't object. Here when someone asks, what is the proof that we can wear black clothing in majalis? This is the proof. That Zayn alAbidin alayhi salatu wasalam says, I visited the house in which this majlis was held. And he says this majlis went on for hours. All of the women wore black. If there was an issue, Sayyid al-Sajidin would have said, why are you wearing black? His approval of that which is done in front of him is authorization of wearing black in a majlis of Sayyid al-Shuhada. He says they cried so much, the riwayah says, that Zayn alAbidin alayhi salatu wasalam is fearful that these women will faint out of the amount that they are crying. And so who is then the one that prepares food for the majlis? Sayyid al-Sajidin himself. When you give food in a majlis, is the practice of Zayn alAbidin. The riwayah says he cooks the best type of food. He ensures that the women eat so that they have enough energy to mourn for Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. And so this is of the first majalis that we have, official majalis held for Abi Abdullah al-Husayn salamullah alayh. If these two questions have been understood, the third question then that arises about this idea of mourning is, why is it that you mourn year upon year? What is it that makes such a tragedy worthy of mourning? In other words, people ask the question, what is the difference between this tragedy of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn salamullah alayh and Sayyid al-Sajidin and the other Imam and any other tragedy? For often you hear you cannot compare this tragedy to anything else. Why? So why is it that I mourn for Abi Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salatu wasalam as if he died and was killed yesterday? Why is it that my mourning doesn't decrease, rather increases year upon year? What's the philosophy behind this? And so scholars said, look, when you wish to judge any tragedy, you look at two things. The first thing that you look at is the way in which it took place. Today when I hear an event has taken place on the news, a tragedy has taken place. When do I deem that tragedy to be more severe than another one? When I see that the way in which it took place was more tragic than another. The number of people that were killed, the way in which they were killed, the way in which the tragedy took place, this is one thing that you analyze when you weigh any tragedy. The second is more important. When is it that the people of the world remember their individuals, remember their people of prominence? A tragedy is not just weighed by how it took place. A tragedy is weighed by who it is that you have lost. Sometimes in this world you find, for example, there's a president that has left, a politician that has died, a charity worker that died a natural death. It wasn't even that they were assassinated or killed, but you will remember them year upon year. Why? Because remembrance of people isn't just based on how they left this world, it's also based on the value of the person that you lost. And both of these things come together in Karbala. The way in which it happened was the most tragic tragedies. That it wasn't just men, it was women, children, it was a 6-month-old child. Who is it that you lost? The Hujjah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The best of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation left this world. This is what makes it a tragedy to remember. And so when you come today, for example, to commemorate Sayyid al-Sajidin, Imam Zayn alAbidin, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi, the reason you do so isn't just because the way in which he left this world, isn't just, that is a big part of it, due to the struggles that he had. But because the blood that was spilt was the blood of a ma'soom and an infallible. The person you left was a person of God. The person that left this world was someone that people would see him, and that would be enough for them to be taken to the doorstep of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you look at the life of Imam al-Sajjad, you find example after example of perfect character, of the peak of infallibility. Time and time again you hear, there were those that harmed him. There were those that opposed him. There were those that physically harmed him, yet his character with them was sublime. A number of scholars have mentioned that in Medina there is a person who used to be the governor of Medina. For a number of years after Karbala, he gives difficulty to Sayyid al-Sajidi. He humiliates him in front of the people. He would do whatever he could to embarrass him. Physically, he would harm Sayyid al-Sajidi. A time comes where the Khalif arrests that very governor. For whatever charges he had, he was fraudulent, he was caught to be stealing money, whatever it may have been. When he is caught, the punishment that he is given by the Khalif is that he has to stand outside of his house in Medina all day. So it was announced in Medina, this person will stand outside his house, umira an yuqaf. He will stand outside of his house, whoever wishes to harm him can harm him. For all of the things that he has done, they can punish him. You're allowed to do so. So books of history say this person said, I'm not scared of anyone in Medina due to what I've harmed. The only person I'm worried about is Ali ibn al-Husayn. Why? Not because of his character, due to the amount that I have harmed him. The only person I'm worried about is him. The Holy Imam makes a point to go past his house with his companions. As he walks past his house, the companions say, Yabna Rasulullah, what should we do to him? So the Imam says, leave him in the way that the Prophet of Islam left the Quraysh. When he says, leave him, this person recites the following verse of Quran. He says, Allahu ya'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalatah. Allah knows where to place his messengers, where to place his guides. This is the character of this man that I have harmed. This is how he responds to me. Allah ya'lamu haythu yaj'alu risalatah. Likewise, there are a number of widows and orphans that live in Medina. Now, naturally, you ask someone, what is the closest and strongest love that they have experienced in this life? The most sincere and purest love that you have experienced in your life is the love of your mother and father. And scholars have this discussion of why that love of a mother for her child is the purest, is the most sincere. What you experience growing up as a child, that affection that you get, you don't find anywhere else. There were 400 widows in Medina, all under the care of Sayyid al-Sajidin. They mentioned this statement in history. They said, we were cared for by Ali ibn al-Husayn. Under his care, we were happier than when we were with our own parents. The tragedy is judged based on who you have lost. And so because you lost the peak of infallibility, that is why you remember him year upon year. That is why these majalis continue. Yes, how the tragedy took place, who was it that you lost? If these three questions have been understood, the fourth question that people ask in regards to the majalis or holding of the majalis is, I said that majlis, mourning, commemoration is something fitri, is part of your innate human nature. Someone can ask the question, my innate human nature tells me that when I wish to mourn, I should mourn at that time. When I remember the person, I cry. Mourning is never organized. Why is it that you schedule your crying and mourning for Abi Abdullah al-Husayn? Someone may ask the question, yes, it's part of your fitrah. You see a tragedy, you cry. You lost a loved one, you cry. But since when does your fitrah say that at 8 p.m. you'll sit together and cry and mourn? Doesn't this go against your fitrah and what your fitrah has told you? And so the answer to that is given in the story of Nabiullah Yusuf alayhi salam. Where? Yusuf salamullah alayhi is put in the prisons. What happens when he's placed in the prisons? When he's placed in the prisons of Egypt after what takes place with Zulaykha, in the daytime, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam is crying. In the afternoon, he cries. In the nighttime, he cries. He's consistently crying due to what took place. The fact that he separated from his father Yaqub, the people of the prison came to him and said, "Oh Yusuf, we are unable to sleep. We'll either sleep in the daytime or we'll sleep in the nighttime. You cry during one of those times. Either you cry in the day or you cry in the night, so in the other time we can sleep." And so we're told then that Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam has scheduled crying. He controls himself. He doesn't cry in the morning. He only cries at night. Or he cries at night time. He doesn't cry in the day. The same thing you find somewhere else. After the death of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, the people of Medina would also complain and say that Az-Zahra salamullahi alayha cries too much. Not because they could hear the voice of her cries, but because we were told when Zahra would cry after the death of the Prophet of Islam, the ground would shake. And so they would say, "Ya Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen, either you cry in the daytime or cry in the nighttime, or you cry somewhere else." And that is when she leaves Medina, she would take Imam al-Hasan with on one hand, Husayn ibn Ali on the other, go to the outskirts of Medina, and in Baytul Ahzan she cries. Did you understand the answer to my question? When your mourning is to such a level, when your grief is to such a level that all the time you are in a state of grief, that is when you can control the crying and mourning that you have. And so because that grief never leaves you, you hold the time to remember them. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam's grief is always there. He's told control that crying. This is part of the fitrah. That grief and that musibah is one that always stays in your heart. This is why you control it. The final question then that I have about the concept of majalis and the idea of holding these gatherings is what etiquette were we taught by Imam Zayn alAbidin alayhi salatu wassalam? In regards to majlis of Sayyid al-Shuhada. What is it that Sayyid al-Sajidin taught us in his life in regards to those majalis? And you have one report that I wish to share of you. And this is the report of Shahabuddin Zuhri. Zuhri is someone who, according to a number of schools and madhahib, is classified as one of the Imam of Ahadith. Meaning, according to the schools, he is a scholar in his own right. Zuhri has a very interesting story. You can read what his relationship was with the Khulafa, why he was with them, what his relationship was with Ali ibn al-Husayn alayhi salatu wasalam. Because Zuhri has in his heart love for Imam Zayn al-Abidin. So Zuhri says, I came to the Holy Imam after Karbala. There are a number of reports that you find that take place between Zuhri and the Holy Imam. He asks certain questions, the Imam would respond. So on this occasion he comes, he says, Ya ibn Rasulillah, I have a wedding. There is the wedding of my child, he is getting married. I wish for you to attend. Zuhri is shocked by the response of the Holy Imam. There is a wedding of my child, I wish for you to attend. The Imam says, since Karbala has taken place, and since the atrocities that took place with my father Husayn salamullah alayhi, I don't attend weddings. It's difficult for me to attend weddings and be in such an atmosphere due to what has taken place. For that grief, that huzn never left Zayn al-Abidin. Zuhri says, I was shocked. Zuhri says, when the Imam said this to me, I didn't persist. Because the reason shook my heart. That because of the tragedy, and because of what he has seen, because of what has taken place, he says, I can't go to a place of happiness like a wedding. Zuhri says, the wedding took place. After a few weeks, I came to my Imam. I said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, you didn't accept my invitation to come to the wedding, but I still wish to host you. How can you host Ali ibn al-Husayn? He says, I still wish to host you. I have kept a majlis for your father, Abi Abdullah, in my house. Imam Zayn al-Abidin says, you have kept a majlis, I'll come. Because of this, I'll come. Zuhri said, I wish to host him. I held a majlis. During that time, the first majalis, what would the majlis be? The majlis would be that a poet would sit on the minbar and recite poetry. This is the early majalis. The Imam alayhi salatu wasalam sit, someone comes, sits on the minbar, recites poetry, and people would mourn. So scholars say that when Zuhri invites the Imam, he brings the Imam to his house, and he places him fi sadr al-majlis, right at the front of the majlis, to honor the holy Imam. So the holy Imam is sitting. Some scholars have said, haven't you heard, when someone recites the musibah, and recites, for example, that Zayn alAbidin was present, speaks about Imam Sajjad, how people cry. So imagine how much people would have cried when Zayn alAbidin was sitting in the majlis himself. You just hear about what Sayyid al-Sajidin saw, and you cry. Imagine the buka and the level of crying when Sayyid al-Sajidin himself is sitting in that majlis. So Zuhri says that we had the majlis. The majlis was held. The Imam was sitting right at the front. And we would be crying and mourning. Because of the intensity of the crying, Zuhri says, I didn't realize what happened. What happened? He says, I opened my eyes. I looked to see after the majlis what is the state of Zayn alAbidin. I saw he's no longer where I put him. I put him at the front of the majlis. He wasn't there. So I looked around to see where the holy Imam has gone. I saw he is sitting right at the back. In fact, the riwayah says he was fixing the shoes of those that came into the majlis. So I was shocked. I came to the holy Imam. I said, Ya ibn Rasulillah, we had placed you there. Why do you sit at the door? And you have similar narrations where Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam say, we are the hosts of the majlis, so we stand at the door. Why is it that you stand there when we placed you there, Ya ibn Rasulillah? And so the Imam would say, because you are just seeing with your own eyes who has come to the majlis. I see really who else has entered into this majlis. And so by seeing who has come to the majlis, I stand at the door out of respect. For the angels would come and visit the majalis of Hussein. The riwayah says, Shaykh Dastaghaib has mentioned this in one of his tafasir. He says, the riwayah says the angels ascend to the heavens. When the angels ascend to the heavens, the other angels look at them and say, what fragrance is coming from you? Angels, the fragrance that they have is the fragrance of Jannah. You've read in riwayat, the fragrance of Jannah is so strong that from years of distance you can still smell it. These angels see the angels that have just ascended. They say, you have a different type of fragrance. What is that fragrance? Shaykh Dastaghaib says the angels say there was a gathering where Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam were mentioned. We were present in that gathering. That is the fragrance that came from that dhikr. So then the riwayah says those are the angels that are in the heavens. They have regret that they missed a gathering where Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salatu wasalam were mentioned. And so what do? They descend to the same place. The gathering has finished. The doors are locked. The lights are off. The riwayah says the angels come down. They take their wings. They spread their wings on the place where you have sat to remember the dhikr of Ahlul Bayt alayhimu salam, so that they can get part of that fragrance of remembrance of Ahlul Bayt. This is part of the etiquette mentioned by Sayyid al-Sajidin alayhi salatu wasalam for majalis. But there is a difference. For when you wish to do majalis, you are able to do so at any time. But it wasn't your brother that was killed. It wasn't your father that was killed. At any time that you wish to do majalis, you are able to do so. But the family of Abi Abdullah al-Husayn, how can they do majlis for Abi Abdullah? For either his hands are in chains, either he is made to travel by camel, or he sees himself in the prisons of Kufa and Sham. When they wish to do majalis, they would be unable to do so. And so Zayn alAbidin alayhi salatu wasalam spends 35 years remembering, mourning the tragedy of his father and what took place with Abi Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam. When he dies and passes away, Medina sees a tashyi' and a janazah like they have never seen before. Because all of Medina had love for Zayn al-Abidin. But I know that Zayn al-Abidin's heart would be broken by the tashyi' that he has been given. For Zayn al-Abidin would have seen that thousands came to pick up my coffin and no one was there to pick up the body of my father, Abi Abdullah al-Husayn. Today I wish to recite one part of the musibah of Imam Zayn alAbidin, which is shared. For you find that sometimes there are masa'ib that are shared amongst different personalities. There is one musibah that is shared by 3 personalities, and I wish to mention each of them. Each share in that musibah. And that is what? And that is that one vital part of any human being's life. How is it that you move around? How is it that you do things in the day? One vital part of your life is the 2 hands that you have. Your hands allow you to do many things. When a person falls, they use their hands. When a person wishes to get up, they use their hands. There are 3 individuals when they needed their hands the most, they didn't have their hands. And this is a shared musibah. And this is part of the musibah of Zayn alAbidin. So what is the first? Who is the first that needed his hands but didn't have them? We're told that in Kufa and Sham particularly, when all of the things that were taken from Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalatu wassalam were brought to Yazid, Yazid sits on his throne, he sees one shirt go by. He sees a sword go by. The heads are brought in front of him, he sees one flag and standard. The narration says Yazid looks at this standard, looks at this flag, and says, why is it that all of the alam, all of the flag has been punctured by the holes of the arrows, except for the place where the hands would rest? All of it has been punctured, all of it is damaged, except for the place where the hands rest. So the response would come, because this is the standard of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. What do you mean this is the standard of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas? They would say, when Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas has the standard in his hands and is returning, the enemy would shoot the standard, but Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas, as long as he has hands, he holds on to that standard. It's only when the hands are cut, then the alam falls on the ground. That's why all of the rest of the standard is damaged, other than the hands of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. He is the first that needed his hands the most. Bishr says, I entered into Medina. Bishr says, I said, Ya Ahla Yathrib la muqama lakum biha. قتل الحسين فأدمئي مدرار. Bishr says, I entered into Medina. People came out of their houses, hearing that the caravan from Karbala has returned. Bishr says, I saw a woman standing in front of me, covered in nur, covered in light. She heard my call and came out of her house. Bishr asked the people of Medina, who is this woman? They said, هذه أم البنين الأربعة. This is أم البنين. Bishr says, how will I tell her what has taken place in Karbala? 4 of her children have been killed. Bishr says, I came to her, I said, أعظم الله لك الأجر بولدك Abdullah. Condolences for the death of your son Abdullah. What is the response of al-Baneen? She would say, why do you tell me about Abdullah? أخبرني عن ولدي الحسين. Tell me about my son Hussein. Bishr said, I told her, condolences for Ja'far. She would say, why do you tell me about Ja'far? Tell me about my son Hussein. Until Bishr comes and says to her, condolences for the loss of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. al-Baneen says, if Abbas Abbas has left this world, then I know that Hussein is no longer alive. For a time comes on the 10th of Muharram where Abul Fadl seeks permission to go towards the Maqtayal. He hears the cries of the children, Al-Atayyaj, Al-Atayyaj. Hussein says, I give you permission, Ya Abul Fadl, but before you go to the Furat, take permission from your sister Zaynab al-Kubra. Abbas says, I went to the tent of Zaynab, I sat down, I asked for permission. Zaynab says, I remembered something in my life. She says, on one occasion when I first went to Kufa, our father took me through the streets of Kufa. He says, this is the marketplace of Kufa, yeah. And this is Darul Imara, yeah. Zaynab said, I told my father, why do you tell me the gate of Kufa, the marketplace, the Darul Amara? He would say, because you will be made captive and prisoner, yeah. Zaynab says, at that time, I looked at Abul Hassan. I said, I have 18 brothers, and one of them is Abbas. How will I be made prisoner? But now that Abbas goes towards the battlefield, I know my hands will be in chains. Abbas goes to the Furat. He takes from the water. As he returns, someone strikes his right hand. Someone would strike his left. One of the scholars says, I was on the mimbar in the shrine of Abul Fadl. I recited this musibah when one of the mujtahideen was sitting on the ground. He said, do not recite this, for this is too intense for us to handle. He says, what did you recite? That this mujtahid said, do not recite this ever again. He said, I recited when they cut the right hand and the left. An arrow was shot in the eyes of Abul The scholar says, I went home, I slept, I saw Abbas in my dream. Abbas said, why did you stop him from reading this musibah? Why? He says, because do you not know when someone has something in their eyes, they use their hands to remove it. But I did not have my hands. I bent down to remove it with my knees. Someone strikes him on the head. He falls on the ground. He says, Ya akhi adrik akhak. This was the first that needed his hands but couldn't use the yam. The second was who Zaynab says, I entered into Medina. I went to the grave of Rasulullah. I said, Assalamu alayka ya Jadda. I said, Ya Rasulullah, if there were not people surrounding me, I would show you the marks on my back. and on my neck. Zaynab says, I entered into the house. I was crying and lamenting for Hussein. Abdullah enters. Abdullah says, I saw a woman crying and lamenting, wa Husayna wa madluma. I said to her, you have all of Medina to cry for Hussein, but this is the house of Zaynab. Zaynab looks at Abdullah. She says, Abdullah, what has Karbala done to me? What has Kufa and Sham done to me? Ana Zaynab al-Kubra. They say Zaynab, when she returned to Medina, her hairs had become white and there were bruises on her face and on her head. Why? They would ask her, why do you have bruises? Listen to the answer. She would say, we would be taken between Kufa and Sham. The children of Hussein wouldn't be tied to their camels. Sometimes the children would fall on the ground. There would be no one to pick up the children of Hussein. So I would make myself fall on the ground. The caravan would stop. I would then wait until these children would be picked up. Zaynab, this doesn't explain why are there bruises on your face. Maybe she would say, when someone falls on the ground, they use their hands to protect them. But my hands were covered in chains. This is the second person. The third was Zayn alAbidin, parading through the streets of Kufa. Sajjad says of the Masa'ib of Kufa was that whatever people had in their hands, they would throw it on us. Zayn alAbidin said there were some that would pour hot water on our heads. Others would pelt us with stones. Sajjad says someone throws a piece of coal on my turban. It begins to burn through the cloth until it would reach his head. Sajjad looks around. He says, I would remove it myself, but my hands are in chains. He says the marks of the coal are still on my head. على لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إلهنا بالحسين الوجيه وجده وأبيه وأمه وأخيه والتسعة المعصومين من ذريته وبني اغفر لأوليائنا وكف عنا أعداءنا واشغلهم عن أذانا وأظهر كلمة الحق واجعلها العليا وأدهث كلمة الباطل واجعلها السفلى إنك على كل شيء قدير يا حسين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, یا حسین 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 حسین یا حسین یا حسین حسین یا حسین یا ہے زینب ہے شام 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 ہے یا اللہ خیر العمل یا اللہ عمل یا اللہ خیر العمل یا اللہ عمل یا اللہ خیر العمل یا حسین یا حسین بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو اور نام نبی زادی کا دربار میں آنا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو اور نام نبی زادی کا دربار میں آنا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو 40 شب و روز کی جاگی ہوئی زینب 40 شب و روز کی جاگی ہوئی زینب رش خاک گری جا اس وقت ستم گئے تھا وہ دروں سے جگانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو معصوم سکینہ نے جو ہاتھوں کو اٹھایا معصوم سکینہ نے جو ہاتھوں کو اٹھایا بابا کو بلایا بیٹی کی صدا پر سر شبیر کا آنا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا سجاد سے پوچھو ماں بہنوں کے سر کو جو کھلا دیکھ نہ پایا، ماں بہنوں کے سر کو جو کھلا دیکھ نہ پایا، حیدر کا دلارا نیزے سے زمیں پر سر عباس کا آنا، سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا، سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا، سجاد سے پوچھو تاریک یہ زندہ وہ سکینہ وہ اندھیرا، تاریک یہ زندہ وہ سکینہ وہ اندھیرا، جب موت نے گہرا ان آخر لمحات میں بابا کو بلانا، سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار میں جانا، سجاد سے پوچھو بے پردہ حرم شام کے بازار کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، جیر نازادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، جیر نازادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، تیری نازادی پلی پاک خط کریاں جدا شام دے بازار آئی، پاک خط کریاں جدا شام دے بازار آئی، دادی مجبور تے بے چین سی زارا جائی، دادی مجبور تے بے چین سی زارا جائی، آنکھیں سجاد پھوپھی تیرے بازار بری، تو گے نازاد پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، تیری نازاد پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، زادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی ردا بیت علی، تیری نازادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی ردا بیت علی، تیری نازادی پلی، ہائے جے کو فرمایا نبی پاک نے دل دا ٹکرا، جے کو فرمایا نبی پاک نے دل دا ٹکرا، ہائے افسوس میری زین کو حق نہ ملیا، ہائے افسوس میری زین کو حق نہ ملیا، او جدا خالی ولی قبر بابے دی گلی، آئے نازادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، تیری نازادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، تیری نازادی پلی کی وے دربار گئی بیردا بیت علی، تیری نازادی پلی، ہائے چادرہ لوٹیاں تے خیمے بھی جلائے لوکاں، چادرہ لوٹیاں تے خیمے بھی جلائے لوکاں،
फातिमा जाया कु बाजार बिकाए लोका फातिमा जाया कु बाजार बिकाए लोका शहर ते शहर फिरी रुल गई आले नबी तेरे नाज़ात पली की वे दरबार गई या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन ओ सर को कटा के दीन पे सर को कटा के दीन पे ओ खुद करबला पे कर दिया तूने हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन ओ सर को कटा के दीन पे सर को कटा के दीन पे खुद करबला पे कर दिया तूने हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन ओ खालिक तेरा ममनून है खालिक तेरा ममनून है ओ है मुर्तज़ा और फातिमा के नूर है या हुसैन हुसैन या हुसैन हुसैन या हुसैन हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन या हुसैन
السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيب الله السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين عليها السلام السلام عليك يا علي بن أبي طالب السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين السلام عليك يا حسن مجتبى السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين وأختك زينب وبنتك رقية جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا أمة المسلمين زين العابدين السلام عليك يا محمد باكر وجعفر الصادق وموسى الكاظم باب الحوائج السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء سلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورفقنا الله لزيارتك يا مولا السلام عليك يا أختك المعصومة ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا محمد تكي السلام عليك يا علي النكي السلام عليك يا حضرة الحسن العسكري عليه السلام السلام عليك يا حجة الله في أرضي السلام عليك يا بقية الله في أرضي فعزفني وأجرني السلام عليك يا صاحب العرش والزمان الأمان 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 السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن وكعبة الإيمان وإمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك ورزقنا الله شفاعة في الدنيا والآخرة وجعلنا من أنصار وأوانك وشيعتنا ومحبيك السلام عليك يا أهل بيت النبوة ومعدن الرسالة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين سمی بولی فلک بولا زباں کے ساتھ دل بولا تیرا مولا میرا مولا مجھے روکا میں پھر بولا غدیر کم نبی بولا مشکل میں بھی عمر بولا نعرہ تکبیر نعرہ رسالت نعرہ